Good afternoon, everyone. This is the California Institute for Regenerative Medicine's informational webinar for the Community Care Centers of Excellence program. I'm Jeff Lomax, the Associate Director for Patient Access at CIRM. Joining me today for this webinar is Doug Kearney, Associate Director of Grants Management, and Emily Reyes, who's the project manager here and has been coordinating this webinar. I'd like to thank her for her organization. A couple of notes in terms of submitting questions in particular. For this webinar, please use the Q&A feature in the webinar platform to submit your questions, and you're welcome to submit them during the webinar. The questions will be categorized by topic, and we'll try to ensure a streamlined answers to those questions. We'll also prioritize them in terms of relevance and frequency. If you don't see your question answered or we don't feel we gave you a complete answer, please feel free to email us at Community Care Centers of Excellence at ccce@cirm.ca.gov. And that email address is also accompanied in the request for application. Couple of notes, the slides and the recording of this webinar will be available on our website, and the address is in front of you. And in addition, a recording of the webinar will be available on our CIRM TV YouTube channel. Again, the address is there, or if you go to our website and click on the YouTube icon, you can get a complete listing of YouTube, of materials on YouTube produced by CIRM. Our mission statement: accelerating world-class science to deliver transformative regenerative medicine treatments in an equitable manner to a diverse California and world. And this program is central to that mission as it involves the delivery of clinical trials to patients. As a reminder, the application is available. You can get a link through our website, and it is the application you would be applying to is in our grants management portal. There are instructions on the website for opening that application. They are due by 2 p.m. on August 15th. I'd like to remind folks of some background materials. There was a public workshop in June of 2023. Those materials are also linked on our webpage. They provide a lot of insight and discussion about the program and include needs assessment materials to support your application. And on January 25th, our governing board, when they approved this funding opportunity, there was considerable discussion by the board discussing the aims and objectives of this program. You may find that useful in terms of formulating your application. And again, the email address, if you have questions or want to correspond with us, is the same as noted previously. I'm going to touch very briefly on the objectives of this program. If you view our previous webinar, we elaborated on May 15th. We did a more extensive elaboration on the programmatic aspects, but to summarize briefly, the objectives of this program are to support access to FDA-authorized clinical trials involving cell, gene, or improved regenerative medicine treatments. It's to make these treatments broadly available to California patients and provide workforce and career development opportunities in the regenerative medicine field. Applicants may also allocate funds from the total award amount to support facilities renovations and/or equipment. This is a 5-year funding opportunity. There are two funding categories. The first is a clinical trial support site, which may request a total award amount of up to $7.5 million. And then a clinical trial support and delivery site, that would be a site that was actually working with investigational products and treating patients. The total award amount is up to $10.054 million per award. And again, the distinctions between the different sites are elaborated in the RFA, and I encourage you to reference that document to see those differences. So with that, again, today's focus is on the budget requirements and some of the elements of the application. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Doug Kearney, Associate Director for Grants Management.
Hello, thanks, Jeff, and thanks, Emily, for putting on this webinar. Just going to do a high-level overview of some more details about the budget requirements for this program, and then we're going to take some questions at the end. Okay, so some other budget limits in this RFA are that all applicants must allocate a minimum of $625,000 to community-based partnerships. Other than that, there are no set budget minimums or limits for clinical trial support, career development, and outreach and engagement within the overall budget caps. So the proportions allocated to those different areas are not specified within the RFA. Oops. Equipment. So actually, I think I skipped a slide. Let's go with renovation. So all renovation costs are to be requested separately from operations. Renovation, when requested, will constitute the initial phase of the project and be budgeted within the first year. And renovation disbursements will be released in advance to reach each contracted milestone achievement. Similarly, equipment requested in the application must be well justified and allocable to the proposed project activities. And the equipment budget will be dispersed on a reimbursement basis with submission of equipment requests and invoices. Equipment must be purchased within the allowable project cost period and be allocable to the CIRM-funded project. And it must be requested within 1 year of purchase and no later than the project period end date. So similar to the renovation cost, the equipment is bucketed into the first year budget request, but then dispersed over time. Whereas the operations costs are requested over a 5-year period. In addition to the direct project costs, this opportunity does also have some overhead attached to it. So facilities rate A costs, which are plant operation and maintenance costs, and library expenses. So this is called CIRM facilities rate A. CIRM uses federal rates when available to calculate the allowable facilities cost rates. Where federal rates are not available, CIRM asks for an organization's internal documentation and methodology supporting those requested facilities rates. So facilities rate A in CIRM's parlance is a part of your federally negotiated rate covering O&M rates and library expenses. Other portions of that federal rate, including depreciation and capital debt interest, are unallowable in this opportunity, as are administrative overhead rates, which we call CIRM indirect costs, including general administration and general expenses, accounting, payroll, administrative offices, and et cetera. Happy to answer any questions about that if you'd like after this presentation. This is an operational milestone-based disbursement award. So for all approved applications, CIRM will work with the applicant to establish operational milestones. An operational milestone is an objective measure of success and will be outlined in a notice of award. An OM is due when it's achieved, so that might vary from the original date listed in the notice of award. Successful achievement of that operational milestone will trigger the next disbursement of funding, which again is in advance. And in an operational milestone-based award, deficit spending is not allowed, but a positive balance carries forward automatically into the next operational milestone period. So a little bit about the workflow in terms of preparing this budget. So you'll want to start with downloading the Excel workbook, which you'll find in the application under the document uploads section. So the workbook is called the INFRA 8 CIRM Funds Calculator CCCE V3 template. And I have a little image here of where you're going to find that. So completing this document, this Excel workbook first before you move on to the online application is where you would start. And within that workbook is some instructions. So you would download that, read the instructions. And once that's complete, you would then transfer the information from that workbook into the online application budget section. So starting with the consultants and subcontractors into the consultant subcontract section of the online application, and then the rest of the budget totals into the online CIRM funds calculator. And once that's complete, the Excel budget worksheet and the online CIRM funds calculator should match. And if it doesn't, then you can get in touch with us and we can help you work through that. But at the end of the day, those two things should match. The last part of the budget package is your narrative budget justification, and that's an important part of your overall budget submission. So, please don't ignore that. There's instructions there in the budget narrative justification. And in addition to that, you can put any quotes that you have or supplemental material as a upload in the upload section as well. And so your budget justification and any upload should all speak to each other and be easy for us to follow and be cohesive as a whole budget piece. So those are my slides. I anticipate we're going to have some questions and happy to answer anything that we can. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff and look forward to any questions.
Thank you, Doug. We've got one that's come in. Let me just try to paraphrase. Maybe you can offer a response. So this is an applicant that's asking if they have some equipment requests with groups they're partnering with. So these would be collaborators in the grants. Are they able to, let me just make sure I get the question clearly. But on their facility proposal, basic renovation and facility improvements, project information page, do they list the information for our primary site, or do we need to replicate that table for each location where renovation will occur or equipment will be located? So the idea is, does that table, does that encapsulate every piece of either renovation or equipment for the entire award, or does it have to be location specific?
Interesting question. So any equipment or renovation costs, regardless of whether they're at they should be contained within that equipment or renovation budget.
Yeah.
So they should be on those budget or renovation worksheets.
Yeah.
And not embedded within a subcontractor operations cost. So operations costs should all be, so the subcontractor worksheet should only be subcontractors involved in the operations, and anything that, even if it's a subcontractor cost that's involved in renovations or equipment, should be in those worksheets.
Okay, so they would be in again, the one you described, the equipment and renovation worksheet.
Yes.
And they could use the narrative to describe kind of where that.
Yeah, because those are effectively separate buckets of funding that will be dispersed differently than the operations costs.
Okay. Thanks for that. Just going to cover a couple of other questions that came in beforehand, which we have addressed, but just it's worth reiterating because they came in writing. Since it's a 5-year grant, will funds be allocated in equal amounts, or can funds be allocated in different amounts? And as Doug indicated, that it's the latter. This is a milestone-based award, so the fund, well, I'll let you go ahead and just reiterate how we talked about funding disbursement.
Right. Well, you're going to be telling us your funds needs over a 5-year period. And then, the operational milestones are going to be based on, time periods that are going to slightly vary. So within the time between operational milestones and your 5-year budget, there's going to be some variation in the amount of funds to get from milestone to milestone. So within those parameters, there will be some variation in that, in the amount of funds dispersed to get from milestone to milestone. Our goal is to release enough funds to get you from milestone to milestone based on your own budget.
Great. So short answer there, develop your budget as needed, and funds will be released on a milestone basis, not a time basis.
Milestone basis in advance, which is
Yep.
partially based on time.
Yep. So I have a question. This is an interesting question. Would renovations, equipment costs for a community-based organization count towards the $625,000 set aside? Or are all renovations and equipment costs looked at completely separately?
So say that again then.
So I think the question, basically, I think the shorthand to that one is, can renovation and equipment be proposed as part of the $625,000 set aside for community-based organizations?
I think that's a programmatic question about what is the intent of community-based
Yeah.
organizations.
Okay, so we've acknowledged that question. We will answer that. I think we're gonna have to answer that via our FAQ. I think the sort of spirit here is that let's answer that one offline. Yeah. Yeah, so another question is, how extensive should our accounting be regarding the $625K that is allocated to the community-based partners? Will the partners also have to report expenditures to CIRM?
Not independently. So we would certainly be requiring a line item budget just to show that you have allocated at least that amount. So we do have financial reporting that shows expenditures per third-party subcontract.
Mhm.
And so, we're assuming that these community-based partnerships are taking the place of the form of a third-party subcontract. So we would be seeing expenditures over time per third-party subcontract and evaluating that at least $625,000 is being expended against the subcontracts that are being identified as community-based partnerships, because you are identifying in the application which subcontracts are community-based partnerships, or at least you will be, over the life of the award. So we would be checking to make sure that you're meeting that requirement at some point over the 5-year period.
And presumably that reporting that comes in would be done by the awardee
By the
organization.
prime awardee.
So in short, the partners would not be reporting independently to CIRM. All that reporting would come through the awardee
The
organization.
awardee would
Yeah.
be responsible for monitoring their own subcontracting, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Well, we've answered 2 of the 3 questions, and we will report back on one of them. We can wait a couple of minutes here to see if any additional questions come in, but I'm not seeing any, so. So there's a question here about if someone is contemplating or going to put a match into their budget, should that or can that or how is that reflected in the budget sheet?
In the budget worksheet. So we did not include, I don't believe that the budget worksheet has a place for a match.
Yep.
There is in the online application, I believe there is a co-funding section. I'll have to double check, but I believe in the online CIRM funds calculator, there is a section for co-funding or matching funding. So the total amount of any matching funding can be entered there and then explained in the budget narrative or budget justification. Matching funds are not a requirement of this application opportunity. So I guess you would leave them out of the budget worksheet, put them into the CIRM funds calculator, put them in the budget narrative to explain what they're being applied to, and then they would show up there for our peer review and board to see, but they wouldn't be part of the Excel.
Not part of the worksheet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that. So again, to summarize, not part of the worksheet, included in the overall budget, and you can use the narrative to highlight any matching or in-kind support you're proposing in your application.
And that follow-up question about is it based on totals? Do not have to be for each component. Again, there's no matching requirement, so it's not based on any particular component. It could be in any form or fashion that is offered. So there's no requirement around any matching funds. So it's not based on totals or components. It's a voluntary extra.
Got it. Is a apheresis machine considered an allowable cost for this project? An apheresis machine, that piece of equipment seems very consistent with the objectives of this award, as long as it's clearly justified and relates to the proposed project activities. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be allowable.
Fixed equipment included.
Yeah, pardon us, we're just collating some questions here.
Facilities that come with fixed equipment included. I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Okay, well, might have to get back to them on that one. Are patient incentives and patient support type funding allowed for referrals from support site to delivery site for assessments?
So there is something in Proposition 14 that disallows patient incentives. So
yeah, well, we'll get an FAQ on that. I think the other point to note in the RFA is that one has to be aware that this award cannot be used to subsidize the cost of services that would otherwise be in a clinical trial agreement. So we'll have to, I would actually encourage that the person asking that question to email us at the address we've noted, and we can try to give a more a clearer answer. But really, we want to make sure whatever is being proposed would be activities that would typically be outside of a clinical trial agreement. So we just have to understand the question a bit better, and like I say, happy to work through that via email if you'd like. And then with that, the answer will be reflected in our frequently asked questions. Yeah, we'll just wait a couple more minutes here as some questions trickle in. Okay.
So the latest question is about negotiated indirect costs. So if you don't have a federally negotiated rate, you can still ask for facilities rate A from CIRM. You would have to be able to justify that rate for operations and maintenance costs, and show us your methodology for justifying that cost. Indirect costs, what we call indirect costs is what the federal government would call administrative overhead, which is not allowed on this program announcement, nor is what we call facilities B, which is depreciation on building and equipment and interest on capital debt. So the only overhead that we're allowing is operations and maintenance and library overhead when applicable. So that's the story with the overhead, and I'm happy to work with you directly as you fill out your application to understand that better. Okay, documentation for any in-kind funds, NIH. Well, so we do generally want some kind of verification for in-kind funds requested at the time of contracting, but since the in-kind funding is not a requirement to this project, we're not going to need that at the time of application. So this would be something that we would work with during a pre-funding administrative review.
And then there are a couple questions here around, this looks like to attract staff and our relocation. If presumably they were to hire someone, would a relocation stipend or a relocation funds otherwise be allowed? I'm not aware of any restriction there, but ask Doug if there's anything we need to think about in terms of, this is really a personnel question for the.
I'm not sure about grant funds for relocation stipends. I only know about relocation expenses. I mean, we have had some grant opportunities with relocation expenses, but I would have to consult with our legal team about whether that's an allowable cost in this case.
Okay, so in terms of the questions around relocation, we're giving, we don't have an answer for you at this time. We'd like to confirm rather than speculate. So we will get back to you on that. And then will CIRM be considering construction grants for community care centers in the future? We currently have authorization from our board for the program before you for the next 5-year period. We can't speculate or make any statements with regard to what that program or what that funding will look like beyond the 5-year award you have, 5-year application you have before you right now. Yeah, that's the one we just answered. Sorry. Yeah, that was the, will we be considering grants in the future? So. Okay.
Questions came in, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a question, I can take that one. How specific do we need to be about expenditures for community-based partners? Can we have a fund to use in the future as relationships evolve? Again, I would refer you to the the RFA and it does indicate that you do not necessarily, you have the opportunity to propose how you could engage with community-based partners. You do not necessarily have to lay out all those commitments in advance. And in fact, that may not be possible given the circumstances. You may need to do things like needs assessments or understand what sort of clinical programs you're supporting. And again, if you know, there's actually very specific language in the request for application indicating that more of using a logic model and a framework for how you will develop your community-based partnerships is considered responsive to the request for application. And then there's a question. I'll just go ahead and go this way. I'll just read the question so everyone has the benefit of it. The RFP references that pursuant to Proposition 14, CIRM shall prioritize applications for community care centers of excellence that offer matching funds or verified in-kind support consistent with highest medical standards as established by the CIRM governing board. What level of match will qualify for priority scoring in the application review? Again, we've in terms of in-kind support or matching funds, they're not required, but if you are to include either matching funds or in-kind support in your application, the peer review panel or CIRM's board may take those into consideration in making either a recommendation for funding or their funding decision, but they are not required.
The question just before that is about the release of funds. So the first tranche of funds is released on execution of the notice of award, which typically we try to get executed, prior to the award start date as soon as we can. And also about the subcontracts with the alpha clinics, the overhead policy is the same for all your subcontracts.
So that would be no indirect costs are allowed, is it?
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
It's the same flow through, so it would be operations and maintenance, facilities B, facilities A only.
To confirm, renovation equipment funds must be requested during the first year of the grant term. Is that, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so what we're asking is that those costs are bucketed in the first year of the grant term. We do expect that the renovation will be the initial phase of the project. Not necessarily that it will take place in 1 year, but that it will be the initial phase. So that might be 6 months and it might be 14 or even 18 months, but that you're bucketing those funds in the first year of the budget request, and then we will disperse those funds according to renovation phase operational milestones in the initial phase of the project. So we're asking you to put the entire amount of the renovation budget into the first year of your budget request. Similarly, but slightly different with the equipment, is that you request all of your equipment request in a single budget year, which is year one, but then you're purchasing that equipment and asking for reimbursement over the 5-year period, but you're not telling us in what year you want to purchase that equipment. So in your budget request, you are upfront asking for renovation and equipment all in year one, but you might not be spending particularly the equipment all in that first year. So I hope that clarifies.
Well, the questions have tended to trickle in, but they appeared to have stopped. So it's if you have a burning question that you want answered now, speak now. Otherwise, you know how to reach us via email if you prefer to follow up that way. Okay, just to confirm, I'm not seeing we good?
I think we're good. People are trickling out, so.
Okay, and yeah, folks are falling off online as well. Okay, very good. Well, I'd like to thank the team, Doug and Emily, for helping us with the webinar, or participating in the webinar today. And again, this has been the CIRM Community Care Centers of Excellence webinar. And seeing no further questions, we're going to conclude